Welcome back to Capitol View. January seems like, gosh, light years ago, but it's just a few months away since Arkansas saw a huge changeover, particularly in the constitutional offices. And here to talk about life after elected office, we're happy to welcome back former Arkansas Attorney General Dustin McDaniel. Thanks very much for being here.
It's good to be with you.
How's life treating you? Out of the spotlight, more or less?
It's treating me very well, thank you. I've been very excited about my new law firm, McDaniel, Richardson and Calhoun. I took two very good lawyers with me from the Attorney General's office, and we are, you put your pants on one leg at a time just like before, and you go into court, and they don't call you general anymore, but you still try and walk out with a win, and that makes your clients happy.
And I'm sure it's no less, I guess, hectic or stressful. You've taken on a role, too, in the Human Rights Campaign. So we saw you just about, I think, a week ago. A couple of things came up here. Was the REFRA and House Bill 202. It's keeping you busy. What gravitated you in this direction?
Well, I don't have any formal relationship with Human Rights Campaign, but I'm a great admirer of Chad Griffin, an Arkansan who has really taken the world stage on speaking out for equality for all citizens. It's important to me, it's important to my family that we in Arkansas send the message to ourselves and to the rest of the country that we don't stand for discrimination. We don't believe that people should be treated differently for who they are. We are all God's children. And so I was honored when they asked if I'd be willing to say a few words. And I think that really Governor Hutchinson shined during the week. I think that he deserves a great deal of credit for how he handled a pretty delicate political situation for him and within his own party. But I think Arkansas really looked good at the end of it.
Which is always the outcome we hope everyone collectively is working together towards. Another big issue that's been here, we've had is the issue over same-sex marriage in the state. Currently, we're under a ban. It had been lifted for a short time, then reinstated. Now we've got the Arkansas State Supreme Court set to hear new arguments, re-arguments on the issue on the ban. Two justices recusing themselves. There are some new justices in there. This opens up a whole host of things we can talk about as far as the Supreme Court is concerned. We'll get to a couple of them. But did you think there'd be a decision on this by this time already?
Well, I assume there would be a decision on it within 2 weeks of oral argument, which took place late last year. Our Supreme Court prides itself on the speed with which it returns opinions. I don't always like their opinions, but I certainly can count on them churning them out quickly. This has certainly been an anomaly. This has not been handled in the way that court observers or practitioners would have expected. This is the issue of the day in terms of constitutional jurisprudence. Courts all over the nation are addressing it. The United States Supreme Court will be taking up the issue in a case that will be landmark. It will be a landmark case. It will be a case that students study for generations. And the idea that our Supreme Court is clearly internally split, they are not sending a signal that would inspire confidence in any litigant to think that their decision will be heard and decided on the merits, not based on internal disputes or politics. Anyone with a case going to the Supreme Court, I would think, would be concerned to see this level of peeling the veil back.
What does that say about justices to Supreme Court who are elected to that position? It seems to be that we get in a situation like this, where a Chief Justice says that, you know what, I'm going to step back from this, when in fact you think you bring an issue before the Supreme Court and that's the law of the land. Those are the folks who are going to stand there, they're going to decide it, make a decision, move on, not step back and say, I got to get hands off on this.
You know, last summer I suggested that we should look at how Missouri appoints the Supreme Court members, and then the people vote to retain them. So there's a selection process, and then democracy kicks in after they're in there, so that it's a system that helps to take the politics out of being a candidate for the Supreme Court or Chief Justice. The legislature considered an amendment to the Constitution that would have done that. It didn't get out, but I think that every time that we see things that cause us to be concerned about how the court operates or how politics influences the members of the court, I think that it only will go to furthering consideration of changing their composition.
Changing composition, something 2 years ago, I think it was, you spoke about the death penalty as Attorney General, calling the system, this whole thing broken. We run into that again. We haven't had an execution in the state 10 years, I think. I don't think that we'll see one in the near future because once we get cleared and new protocols get put in place, now there are issues about whether or not the state can actually find someone to buy the lethal injection, the drugs used for lethal injection. So we're kind of at a situation where we're in a limbo here. I mean, what would it take, in your point of view, to move this, I guess, farther down the road?
Well, I don't know. I do know that Governor Hutchinson and General Rutledge are both committed to seeing executions carried out. I was committed to seeing executions carried out, and it was, you know, it's just an extremely complicated thing. And I think that this will be a lot like Guantanamo Bay was for the president. You know, Obama said, I'm going to become president, I'm going to shut down Guantanamo Bay in the first week, and here it is 6 years later, and it's still not shut down because it wasn't nearly as easily done as it was said. So the governor and General Rutledge both really want to see executions resume in Arkansas, but it is one layer of courtroom drama after another, and if you get past the legal challenges, you get, as you said, back into the reality of the complications of just acquiring the drugs. So a lot of states are really, we're not alone. I mean, a lot of states are in this same boat, and now you saw the largest Association of American Pharmacists just in the last week or 2 weeks hand down guidelines that would prohibit their members from providing drugs for the purpose of lethal injection. So it's not going to be any simpler. No, and just this week, I think, too, Jeff Rosenzweig, who famously fights for death row inmates, filed a host of lawsuits again. It's going to hold this up even farther. Do you see a point, and you know, this is such a hard question to answer for anybody, do you see a point where the state of Arkansas just parks the death penalty and says, you know what, let's move on a different direction? Well, it certainly could get to that point just as a matter of frustration. But I have spoken personally with the governor before he was sworn in on this issue, and I know that he is committed to trying to pursue avenues of resuming executions rather than walking away from it. So I think that it's, at this point, I don't think there's a political appetite to do away with the death penalty in Arkansas, at least not with our current legislature and constitutional officers, and I didn't support that. I wanted to see them carried out, but we are going to reach a point where sooner or later we continue to just throw good money after bad for something that's not going to happen. There's an entire department of lawyers at the Attorney General's office that all they do is work on these cases that truly have no end, ever. No end seems to be the problems in the Little Rock School District. Education in the state always seems to be trying to evolve for the better. It seems the state has taken over. Let's evolve backwards, it may be, some folks say, for the Little Rock School District. This opens up a can of worms, basically, for education in the state. And a lot of people trying to move away from districts, break away, create their own. What's your take on that? Well, you know, I still like to think of myself as a relatively young guy. I turned 43 next week. But you are relatively young. But I do have some institutional memory on this. And if you think back 10 years ago, when Lakeview was raging, we were special session after special session back in and out of the Arkansas Supreme Court. Desegregation here in Pulaski County clearly had no end in sight. I wanted to see both of those changed, and you know, in my obituary someday, hopefully a long time from now, I hope that both of those get mentioned because we are in a much better place. But it also, being in a better place takes some of the spotlight off of it, takes some of the urgency away, and takes away some of the fear that was there 10 years ago. And fear is important. A house that doesn't burn doesn't make the news. Right. So fear is kind of important in this, and so the concern being for the legislature maybe finding their way back into some Lakeview litigation risks, and I know that's a concern, and it's something for us all to watch. As one of those things. Do you think the state takeover for Little Rock, good move for the district, good move for students? I certainly do. I think that it was the right thing to do. That school district, even though individual teachers, outstanding. Individual administrators, great. Certain members of the school board, truthfully, could not be more committed, wonderful people. But it had reached a point of being dysfunctional, and I think that the state coming in and providing the leadership and the streamlined administration that's going to be required, to get the schools out of academic and fiscal, or academic distress, avoid fiscal distress as the desegregation funds stop. I think there could not be a better time for there to be some really firm leadership at the helm there.
All right, and you probably recall this, 2 years ago, I think it was about 2 years ago, Attorney General Dustin McDaniel was the first guest on Capitol View.
I was, and I remember we had some sort of technical difficulties with the taping, and I had to come back the next day and tape it twice.
Technical difficulties in television?
We had to tape it twice, so I was your first guest twice.
Twice. Well, private citizen Dustin McDaniel, thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Great to be with you.
Appreciate it.